Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Good crowd? Good crowd? Are you guys going to be kind to us? Yeah? All right. Well, welcome. I'm very happy to see you all here today. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Amir, Nanda, and Dave, who are going to be joining us on stage for their parts. And we would love to share more about DataZone with you. Let's jump right in. So today, we'll first start with some common customer data challenges that we hear about from a lot of you. We'll jump into some features and capabilities that we've created to solve those problems. Then we'll go a little deeper into tech architecture and what kind of architectures we support. We expect a lot of questions in this area, so we will be hanging out after the session if you guys want to chat with us. And of course, last but not the least, your Q&A. We have about 15 minutes as part of the session, but we will be hanging out after, so if you want to connect with us, we'll be here. So let's start. We all know that organizations and leaders such as yourselves, you want to use the right data to make informed decisions. According to Forrester, organizations that use their data to make decisions grow at an average of 30% more than those who don't. What's not to like about that, right? But everybody wants this, but it's so hard to do, as you all know. That's why you're here, right? So let's see what comes in the way. Some of the common things we hear from our customers which led us to create DataZone. Number one, finding the data is hard. It's all over. It's across a variety of data sources. You simply can't look for things that you need to. Sharing and searching, well, searching was finding, and then sharing is harder. Then getting access to it is even harder, right? And the list just goes on. There's so many things here that I'm sure you resonate with. Does this seem familiar? Do any of these quotes seem familiar? Quick show of hands if this seems familiar. OK, all right. A lot of you, the rest of you, haven't had your coffee yet. It's OK. It's OK. Anyways, so looking at those quotes, the themes that we derived from those quotes are really these 5 things. Number one, finding data is hard, right? Especially across multiple sources, even in AWS, multiple accounts, multiple regions. Then, even when you find it, getting access to it is harder. Even when you get access to it, the technical barriers in getting to the tools that you need to use across AWS and across the fragmented data landscape that we all work towards is extremely hard as well. Then next, data people are really wanting to play a team sport, right? Data analysts, data scientists, data engineers tend to work together across the analytics lifecycle. But we don't really have an easy way of doing that today. It's very fragmented. So that's the 4th challenge. And last but not the least, governance across all of this is the hardest because the data is all over, tools are all over, teams that manage access are all over. So these are the key themes that you'll see us address in today's presentation. And just take a visual imprint of this picture, because we'll thread this along the entire presentation, and you'll see different areas light up on how we address these challenges. So what DataZone provides is really an integrated environment, a unified environment, a zone, we like to call it, where everybody in your organization, all your data people, can really work together to discover, access, share, and govern the data. Does this picture seem familiar? I know several of you have been thinking about data producers, consumers. Does this seem familiar to you? Yeah? All right. OK. Thank you. All right. I'll give you a quick example of campaign analysis of who these data producers and consumers are. So in this particular example, there's a sales team that's a data producer, and they have data across multiple sources, revenue data in Redshift data warehouse, or they have campaign data sitting in data lakes, or they have SaaS solutions like Salesforce where there's opportunity data sitting there, and they want to combine all of that and offer it to their consumers. And the consumer here could be like a marketing team that wants to run a campaign on this data, and they can use DataZone to do this. We demoed this exact scenario in Swami's keynote this morning. So if you missed it, it would be available online for you to take a look at offline as well, where we show the product and this exact scenario there. And with every AWS service, we have worked very closely with several of our customers to build this service. And I see several of you in the room here. So I want to just take a moment to recognize that they've been working with us for several months and have really been part of the design process. First is Angie, and I see Gregory right here, who's the CTO of data at Angie. If you caught Adam's keynote, you saw their CIO talk about Angie's Common Data Hub solution. And they've been working with us over the past 6 months to help design DataZone. Thank you, Gregory. Next is Fox. I see Alex here, who's the VP of Data Infrastructure. Thank you, Alex. Has been working with us for the past 6 months as well to help design a system which helps them with data discovery, but in a governed manner. And Ritau, not sure if I saw Figuera come in or anybody from Ritau. If you're here, thank you so much. If not, I'll thank you in person later. All right. Now let me hand over to Nanda, who is our Senior Product Manager, and she's going to walk through some of the capabilities and key features that we have built as part of DataZone. Welcome, Nanda.
Great. Thank you, Shikha. Good afternoon, everyone. I know we are between your lunch and coffee break, so we'll just keep it brief in terms of talking about the capabilities. So DataZone introduces 4 key components. Number 1 is a business data catalog. It makes data visible with business context for users who can come from anywhere in the enterprise. And users who are producers of the data also have an ability to catalog their data with business context into the business data catalog. Number 2, data projects. To simplify the use of data and analytics with a group of users and data in a business context grouping. That's what project brings you. It helps users to work with each other, collaborate, exchange their data assets, and also any artifacts that they produce along the way. Number 3, it doesn't stop there. There is a governed workflow where producers of the data can securely exchange data with the consumers and make sure that the right people get access to the right data with the right purpose of the business context. This also ensures that the owners or the producers of the data have the ability to see who has access and for what purpose they're using across the line of business units and projects. The 4th pillar is the data portal. This is an out-of-console data portal where users can get an integrated data experience where they can log in, search, and find the data and understand the data within the business context. It also allows users to collaborate with each other and work on cross-functional use cases. Because when they're in the context of a business use case, there are multiple people working on multiple aspects of these use cases. Finally, users can log in with their own corporate identity, their own SSO identity, and use a self-service personalized workflow to go through their part of the use case analysis process. So in a nutshell, DataZone Data Portal brings all of these experiences together where users can search their data and innovate on behalf of the use case. Second, producers of the data can catalog in a self-service manner in an out-of-console data portal. Third, consumers can find and subscribe to data and also get entitled to some of the supported data sets. And finally, they can also use this data in some of the analytical tools that are seamlessly integrated. So it is really an end-to-end business use case-centric, self-service, personalized experience for each role or each member within the project. So let's look at some of the core capabilities briefly. So front and center of this experience for any standard user in an enterprise is ability to search. DataZone Data Portal allows you to actually, it allows a faceted search where users can come, start typing their search terms. As they start typing, they can see the suggested search categories already show up, which gives them confidence in the data that they're looking at. Further, they can also use some of the search filters that appear on the right-hand side, where post-search can also be further narrowed down to specifically what they're looking for within the context of their business use case. So let's see, how does it all come together, right? In large enterprises, typically what we see is the responsibility of data is usually segmented along their business organizational lines or business entities. Each one of them have their own best practices, their own governance policies. Some organizations may want to share their data widely with a large set of users, and some of them may want to have very specific controls. How do you make all of this possible from an organization perspective? DataZone introduces a feature called Domain, which is precisely this umbrella capability where users can come, catalog their data with rich business context, and the data can reside in any account, any region, any supported region. Number two, you can also manage consistency and standards using mechanisms such as metadata forms, business glossary, which we'll briefly look at a little later. And finally, users also are under some kind of a discipline that's enforced within the domain, where they have to abide by the standards as set by the data experts. And this helps manage the governance, the workflow, as well as the consistency in terminology of the assets in the catalog. Each organization can also represent their own organizational hierarchy with the domain using subdomains. And this helps bring the specific experts to their own domain or subdomain based on who understands this data better. So for example, you can have a corp domain as maybe a higher level domain, and then have sales, marketing, finance as subdomains. And then within finance, maybe you can have reporting, budgeting, planning, whatever makes sense for your organization. The benefit of doing this is that you can designate some of the experts as data stewards, and they set the standards for intake policies, as well as all of the governance around each of their own domain, and they can make sure that the quality of the metadata is consistent and usable for end users. Next, let's see where all can you get the data from to catalog in the metadata. DataZone allows you to catalog data directly from AWS Glue data catalog and Amazon Redshift data. That means you're able to catalog data from S3, any of the purpose-built databases such as RDS, and data from any of the applications through 70+ Glue connectors that are available. And if you guys attended the keynote this morning, there were 50+ AppFlow connectors where you can also get the data from into one of those, into one of our data lakes, and seamlessly catalog that technical metadata in the data catalog. So how do you make sure this data is usable, and what is in a business data catalog, right? So behind the scenes, the lowest granularity of the asset in a business data catalog is called our data assets. You can think of those as tables, files, dashboards, and so on. Each one of them have technical information such as table name, table description, column name, column types, and column descriptions, and so on. And further, you can have extensible business metadata, such as business descriptions, alias, sensitivity of the data, classification of the data, and so on. So users who are looking for data understand this data in the context or in the language that they are familiar with. With this, the data stewards also have an ability to create what we call as metadata forms. Metadata forms is really some type of you can think of it as an intake form where your data stewards can set up recommended or required fields that all of the publishers into the catalog must abide by, or they must follow those rules, and anything that's required must be provided. And they also may have recommended values for these things. And in addition, a data steward may also update those forms to make sure that the metadata is rich and usable. If you see an example here, a sales domain data steward may set up a metadata form and make sure that sales region is a must for any data asset that comes into the catalog. And then they may also recommend that publishers also provide other attributes such as sales year, sales quarter, and so on. Further, you can also make sure that there is consistency in the values that they provide for each column in the metadata form. So some of those columns may be very sensitive, or it's probably required for your business. And data stewards can define business glossary or a hierarchy of business glossary. In this case, they have the regions that are predefined. So users are expected to pick. That's the only option they have, is to pick from one of those predefined business glossary. And this helps with a couple of things, right? One, of course, the consistency of the metadata that you can see in your catalog. Second, it helps to have these terms relate with each other. So users can understand this data in the context as they understand data. For example, some of our own internal use cases, we see the word revenue being used differently by different groups. So they can make sure that there is a business glossary that actually refers to that particular field and explain that further for better understandability of data. And thirdly, this also helps abstract away any technical jargon for people who are trying to look for data in a language that they understand and not using call_ID and so on. Finally, how does this all, so now that we know how is it organized and what data can be cataloged and what is really an asset, what is the workflow? Let's quickly take a quick peek at the workflow that helps users come and publish their data into the catalog in a self-service manner, or for users to come consume the data and work on the rest of their use cases. A lot of customers that we talk to, they're all trying to come up with some way of organizing their data, their users, and the tools, and control access at a group level so they don't have to deal with individual user access, understand why they're using the data, what's your retention policy, how do you revoke, and so on. So project is precisely that capability, which brings a group of users a data that they're either producing to catalog or that they have an entitlement for, and the tools where they work on their data or they use their data, bring all of this together under a business context. I think the thing to understand here is that any entitlement is actually given to the business context or the business use case. And users can be added and removed anytime. And any access a user may have here is actually federated through the identity of that project context or a business context. Finally, a project also gives the producers of the data an ability to control the ownership of their own data in a completely decentralized manner, where each project member or each producer, the owner of the producer actually knows who's requesting access, who's using, and make sure they can audit. So with this, projects can be deployed in a specific AWS accounts. We support multiple accounts, cross accounts. So within each account, you also, as a creator of the project, you have an ability to configure resources via what we call as capabilities, which gives you a seamless access into the tool where you potentially want to use the data. And a user can log in into the portal, click on the search, look for whatever data, and quickly make sure that they get the entitlement and further proceed to actually use the data and complete their end-to-end workflow, which speeds up working on their business use cases. So with this context, I will invite Amir Barar, who is our principal engineer, and he'll walk you guys through the architecture. Thank you.
OK, so now that you heard about our core capabilities, let's discuss some key data enterprise data architectures that Amazon DataZone supports. We'll start with the data lake architecture, the well-known and beloved data lake architecture. The modern data architecture should connect your data lake, your data warehouse, and your purposely built data service into one coherent whole. The data lake allows you to have a single place where you can run analytics on most of your data, and the purpose-built analytical services provides you with the ability and the speed to run most of your use cases. Amazon DataZone complements this architecture by providing you a business catalog that helps business users to find data assets for their use cases, as well as the ability to control data access and understand usage. Now, in terms of data flow, this is an N1M model. You have N producers, one data lake, and M consumers. And the red circle here is basically a single domain. But as your company grows, and if you really embrace the data democratization across your company, you might end up having hundreds, maybe thousands of data producers, data consumers, and many data domains. Your architecture must scale. Now, data mesh architecture is one of the modern data architecture that provide this needed capability. Now, I said the buzzword data mesh. Now, let's see how popular the data mesh in this room is. Here's a question for you guys. Please wake up. Let's see, by show of hands, how many of you guys are working on data mesh or planning of implementing data mesh in your organization? Wow. This is a lot of people. We are in the mecca of data mesh here, guys. Awesome. So this presentation is just for the two guys that didn't raise their hand in the back. No, I'm kidding. Just stay seated. We'll get into this. So Amazon DataZone provides a scalable hierarchical structure for data domains that are connected to producers and consumers. Let's examine a few architectural principles that both the data mesh and data zones embrace. Decentralized ownership. Amazon DataZone allows data producers to keep ownership over their data and define how the data is shared, discovered, and used. It allows the subject matter experts that knows the most about the data, which are typically the data producers, to fully control the life cycle of their assets. Federated governance. The Amazon DataZone domains enable federated governance over a network from producers to consumers. Producers can publish the data under their appropriate domain and be subject to governance rules set by those domain stewards. consumers can discover data and subscribe to data assets across the domains, but must accept and adhere to the terms of use. Peer-to-peer data sharing. Data is shared directly from the producer to the consumer. There is no need to stage the data into a centralized staging area or a data lake or a data warehouse. This is a true end-to-end model in terms of data flow. And finally, self-service infrastructure. After the initial setup, producers, consumers, and stewards can publish, govern, discover, request access, and consume data without the need of any administrator or cloud development teams. These 4 principles allow us to remove bottlenecks that are often found in centralized data lakes and data warehouses. Now let's see how Amazon DataZone support these principles. DataZone provides self-service analytics through projects. My colleague Nanda described how projects are a container for assets, analytical tools, and users. Now let's review the project user workflows. DataZone allows projects to publish assets to a DataZone domain. Projects can also discover assets across domain and subscribe to them. And finally, subscription can be fulfilled by enabling the project to access the data and analyze it with the project-permitted analytical services. Now, in the next 3 slides, we will take a deeper look into each of those workflows: publishing, subscribing, and fulfillment. A DataZone project that want to publish data must first have a valid publishing agreement with a domain. A publishing agreement is like a contract between the data producer and the catalog domain that defines the terms and conditions for publishing and subscribing. Terms like who can publish, who can subscribe, what assets can be published, is authorization needed, and if authorization needed, who will be the authorizer? The publishing agreement can start from an agreement draft that the domain steward created, and the final agreement will include the negotiated agreed terms between the publishing project and the catalog domain. Sounds too theoretical? Okay, let's use an example. You may call it analogy. A category manager in our Amazon retail shop is very similar to a data domain steward. They have similar jobs. So let's assume that I'm the category manager for the TVs in Amazon, and Chika here is coming from a very wealthy family of TV manufacturers. And she wants to sell her products through me. Okay, my job is to make sure that my customer can go and find the products in my catalog, and it's a high-quality catalog. I therefore create an initial publishing agreement that requires a metadata form. And in that metadata form, I'm going to ask simple questions. For example, what is the type of screen that you're going to sell for the TV? Is it a QLED, LCD, OLED, and so on? I'm even going to create a business glossary with these standard terms to create higher quality. The second field can be the type of the size of the screen. Is it a 50-inch, a 60-inch, and so on, right? With the standard sizes. I can also demand that you will sell the products in all the regions where I have customers. Now, this is the initial publishing agreement. When Chika comes and wants to sell her product through me, she's going to look at the agreement. She might accept the terms. We might negotiate, for example, she wants to sell it only in the US and Europe. I can agree to that, and then that forms our final publishing agreement. This enables federated governance, where each domain defines the requirement for the publishing and subscription, and at the same time, it leaves the details of how it is implemented to the producing project. Okay, so now we have a publishing agreement. Now let's see how the actual process of publishing data assets is. So in this diagram, you see an example of a publishing workflow. As I said before, in the publishing agreement, you can customize this workflow. You can skip some steps and so on. In this particular example, the process starts by creating a publishing job to curate metadata for a selected set of physical assets. This, for example, can be curating a set of golden tables from a Redshift data warehouse. After the publishing job ran, draft assets are created, and the data publisher adds additional metadata, descriptions, annotations, and so on to improve the discovery experience, as well as to meet the conditions that are agreed in the publishing agreement. Once the required changes are made, the data publisher submits the request, and the data steward can then review the data for completeness, accuracy, and then decide if to approve or reject it. If they approve, the asset is then published in the catalog. Once the data is published into the domain, data consumers can discover and request subscription to it. This process starts by the data subscriber searching and browsing the catalog and to try to find data assets for their use case. From the Amazon DataZone portal, they can go and type their search term, use the filters and so on, and when they found the assets that they want, they click subscribe, and they provide the business justification of, I need this access for so-and-so. The subscription approver, as defined in the publishing agreement, can then review the request and decide if to approve or reject. Once the subscription is granted, a fulfillment process can start to facilitate the access to the data asset for the subscribing project. Now, the Amazon DataZone can only fulfill a subset of the data asset. This depends on the type of the data store and the permission provided to the Amazon DataZone service. In our current preview version, the Amazon DataZone supports lake formation tables and Redshift tables fulfillment. Now let's look at those two data stores and see how fulfillment happens for them. This diagram shows how we implement subscription fulfillment for lake formation table using Glue table links and lake formation permissions. Now I'm not going to go each of those steps for lack of time, but I'm going to tell you what's important here. The consumer and the producer can be in completely different accounts and even different regions. There is no need for data movement. There is also no need for an administrator to facilitate each of those subscriptions. DataZone service can fully automate this process if provided with the required permissions. Similarly for Redshift. Again, the consumer and the producer can be in completely different data warehouses. These warehouses might be in different accounts and might be even in different regions. In these cases, we are using the Redshift data shares to facilitate the subscription. DataZone will orchestrate and maintain the data shares with all the subscribed and granted tables between the producer and the consumer warehouses. This, again, can be done without having a database admin in the middle, completely self-service. Of course, if the consumer and the producer just happen to be on the same data warehouse, this fulfillment can turn into just a simple grant statement. An hour to talk about DataZone only scratches the surface, but we'd love to continue the conversation. I'd like to invite back my colleagues, Nanda, Dave, and Chika, and we'll accept some questions. Also, feel free to scan the QR code and visit our product page and additional DataZone resources. Please let us know if you are interested in joining our preview, which will start early 2023. If you register, we can keep you up to date when we can get started.